Right, we get started now. So thank you for joining us on our webinar today on MRDC Reporting Toolkit. I'm Charlotte Hearn. I've got Phil Hearn here with me, who will be presenting today, talking about the background as to why we've developed this tool and a step-by-step demonstration of how to use it. As usual, the question and answer box down the bottom. If at any point you want to type in a question, at the end of the presentation, we'll do our best to try and answer as many questions as we can. So I'll pass over to Phil.
Thank you, Charlotte, for that introduction. And I'm going to start today by sort of perhaps talking about why we've got this new reporting toolkit that we're launching in the next week. And this is the, if you like, the first phase in this development. And it's sort of come out of, I think, quite good reasons. We're very aware that one of the things that people spend time on when they produce results in our software, our software packages MRDCL and QPSMR, is that they've got to get these figures either into presentations that they're making to clients or perhaps in reports that they're producing for clients. And these presentations and reports may be in Excel format, they may be in PowerPoint, Google Sheets increasingly, or Google Slides, any of these types of things. And they all take time to prepare. And what's more, to a great extent, they're hard to prepare until the results are actually ready. So you can do some of the work, perhaps put some of the commentary in if you know what's coming out from the survey, but it still requires a lot of late night work perhaps to get everything ready for a presentation the next morning, hence the slide here. So we've tried to make it easier for everyone who's using MRDCL or QPSMR to get their results out of our survey software and into the presentations and reports to make it easier for you, to save you time, and some other reasons which we'll come to as we go along. We don't see this as the final version. We see this as the first step in a series of 2 or 3 steps. We aim to improve the tools and really work with some customers so that we can improve these tools over the coming 6 to 9 months. We don't see this as an end in any sense in what we're delivering at this stage, and indeed we want to work with customers to see if we can improve what we have. And indeed, at the end of this webinar, we will be making an offer where we will be looking at the opportunity for a collaboration so that we can really produce something that really improves what you do, and we'll come back to that at the end of the webinar. All right, now I should start by saying that this tool or these tools will work with people who are using MRDCL or QPSMR to produce their tables, and it would work with anyone else who can output their figures that they want in their reports and presentations in a compatible format. And by that I mean in a spreadsheet format, so that the rest of the process can be automated. And that'll all come to light as we work through an example shortly. So let's just look at some of the problems first before we get into the sort of live action. Some of the problems that you face with getting results into presentations and reports. And one of the problems that you get is that the survey you might have the survey results on, let's say, 490 respondents, but the last 10 haven't come through, and you can't put your final presentation together because some figures might change by 1 or 2%, which will obviously make your presentation or report invalid or out of date. So there's always that problem of additional data that's got to be added in, or some of it coming through late. You often want multiple reports, so it's fine where you perhaps want one report for all the data that you're collecting, but if the client would like a report for each country or each particular demographic or something like that, or a report for heavy, medium and light users, that can be very time consuming to do, where you've actually got to go through and edit the figures in each report to make the 3, 4, 5, 6 or however reports it is. And of course, in some cases that might be, I've seen reports where you do a report for each outlet, where you might want literally hundreds of reports. There might be late changes to the report, so at the last minute the client, or perhaps your boss, whoever it might be, requests that something is added or changed in the layout, and that again can cause problems in getting it ready in a timely manner. And of course, mistakes happen in data processing as well, in that perhaps somebody has cut all the data by 3 age groups. They thought you wanted 21 to 40, 41 to 60 and 61 plus, but actually you wanted 16 to 34, 35 to 54 and 55 plus, and they've cut the age bands wrongly so that all of your data has come out wrong, and it needs to be updated so that the reports then can be updated with the correct figures. So there are some good reasons for that, and of course there's more. And there are other things like tracking studies where you want predominantly the same report every month or quarter, however you run the project, but at the end of the day you want to be able to just update it with the next set of figures from the same survey or the same results and tables. So this whole process of getting figures through from tables or results through to a presentation is easy, but it's not quite as easy as you'd like. It's almost easy, shall we say, but it becomes a little bit more fiddly than it might appear on the surface. It's not just a copy paste. It's a little bit more than that. So you might get a table of brands by region or something like that, and you want to put that into a PowerPoint chart, something as simple as that. But when it comes to doing it, it might not be just a case of pasting the figures in. The figures might not be laid out quite as neatly as you want them. There may be figures and percentages in that table, so therefore you want alternate rows in that spreadsheet rather than just as it looks there. There might be other things that you want to do to get the figures in. So what we have looked at and we've put in place in the MRDC Reporting Toolkit is that we're now letting you link your tables to, if you like, your final reports, so that rather than you having to update it each time to produce multiple reports or make changes or add data, all those things that we cited, you are as close as possible just to running it again and pressing a button. The procedure that we follow to get these reports is one that is remarkably obvious. We produce the results, we identify or isolate the figures that we need for a report, because typically we don't show all the figures that we're producing for a report. We just want the interesting ones or the most relevant ones. We need to link those figures into that report, and finally we want to be able to produce that report. So it's a fairly simple logical procedure. So what we're going to do to take you through how we're approaching that in the toolkit is that we're going to work, if you like, backwards and then forwards. So what I'm going to do is take you through a worked example and show you backwards how we're getting to the report we want, and then we'll look at some of the tools that you get to actually really do it on a real project for yourselves. Okay, so let me come out of this presentation now and we'll switch to the QPSMR. Now, the first thing to say is that the procedure is almost identical for QPSMR and MRDCL. There is a difference in the way that you produce the tables. That's the difference, and there's a good reason for that, is that MRDCL producing the tables is very much more in your hands. In QPS, you're constrained by the way that QPS lets you set up those tables. So I'm going to open up the MRDC Reporting Toolkit. Now, this is one that I'm opening that's been prepared with some reports and with all the links that we talked about there through from the original tables already in place. What you would normally do on a new project, you would start with an empty one, and we'll look at that in a little while when we come to setting up a project, a fresh project. All right, so let's open up this workbook. and we'll see what it does. Now, the whole system is built around Excel at the moment. So if you've got reports in PowerPoint, you're just going to link through what you've got in Excel to PowerPoint. So by that, I mean that if you've got a chart in here, you can just link it through to PowerPoint and it will automatically update in PowerPoint. If you've got Google Sheets or Google Slides that you use, you can just import the Reporting Toolkit workbook and it will have everything working just as you will see it here in Excel. So we've tested that and everything works with Google Sheets and Google Slides as well. So that's also perfectly good as a way to work. So I'm going to start by looking at a report that already exists. So if we look at this report here, you can see it's quite a simple one actually. It's just one page. It's got a piece of text in the top left hand corner. You'll see in there it's got percentage 1%, and that's a figure that we're going to feed into it from our tables in a little while. We'll come back to that. Then we've got a more familiar chart saying favourite brands. We've got a rating of brand 101, split by north, south, east and west, showing very good, quite good and so on. We've got a table of mean scores for the brands here, 101 to 105 in the 4 regions. And we've got a top 2 box analysis here showing how many people gave the top 2 for each brand within each region. And finally up here in the top right, we've got a piece of text saying the survey was based on, again, that percentage 1% respondents, and I'll come back to that in a little while. But this is obviously quite a simple report of just 4 or 5 slides. It could of course be many more than that. It could be literally hundreds of charts and slides that you want. And if we wanted to link this to PowerPoint, all we would have to do is just literally highlight that, copy it, paste it into PowerPoint, and the link would be established so that if anything updated in here, it would automatically update in your PowerPoint presentation, so that you could do everything you wanted in PowerPoint. Likewise, if you wanted to import it into Google Sheets, you could just take it into Google Sheets and everything would update. Now, I said we're going to work backwards through the process to understand what happens before we then go forwards again, if you like, and follow it from start on a new project. So if we go backwards through the process, what's feeding these charts and table of figures here is some worksheets that contains the results. And if I look at them, you'll see that, let's look at the worksheet here, report data P. Here's the figures for the favourite brands. That's being fed by the figures here in these cells here. So these cells here in favourite brands, picking up brands A to G, are feeding, oops, went the wrong way, are feeding the chart that's coming out here. So that's, if you like, the source of my data, and that connection was built using tools in Excel. So all that we did to do that was just to highlight those figures, make a chart and place the chart here and just position it and stretch it, set any formatting options we wanted for colors and so on, so that it was linked from this data. So that's the sort of first step backwards in the process, that this chart is being fed by the figures in here. Now you might wonder why I've got a worksheet called Report Data P and Report Data F. There is a good reason for that, because the Reporting Toolkit separates data that's percentages and figures. So these are percentages, and anything in the underscore F sheet here are figures, and it treats mean scores as figures. Most charts that you produce are based on percentages. Mean scores are figures. Occasionally you actually want to show figures, so if you wanted to show the total litres or something of someone had consumed, you might have figures then rather than percentages. But if you wanted the percentages consumed by anybody, you would go to the percentages sheet, of course, as well, because that would still be the data that you were using. So you basically got access to the percentages or the figures, and we put those references in separate worksheets. one here I've called report data underscore P and one report data underscore F. They haven't got to be called those names, it's just names I've given them for my own clarity. So that's what's feeding the report, and we can see that in action. If I were to update this figure here with 10, this is actually fed by random numbers at the moment, and you can see they're all updated. If I change brand A North to 10, go back to my report, and you can see that blue box down there, that brand A in the North is now 10%. So it's all linking through from these source sheets here. So that's all quite simple and quite straightforward. The next link in the chain that we need working backwards is to tell this system where to find those figures in my MRDCL or QPS-MR tables. And we do that by having a almost mirror image sheet that looks like the figures and the percentages sheet here in another sheet, and I've called those test underscore P for the percentages, test underscore F for the figures. And here's the percentages that we're pulling through to our report. Let's click on this, and you can now see we've got a sheet where it tells QPS in this case where the figures are, and this has got a little bit of syntax in here. So it says it's picking up table 1, row 1, column 1, all the way down to row 7, column 1, across to row 7, column 4. So the figures that I'm using to feed my chart, and indeed to feed this sheet over here, are the figures in table 1, row 1, column 1, in the box, if you like, row 1, column 7, sorry, row 7, column 4. So this is telling it where to get the figures from my tables. Now, of course, I've got to have those tables set up so that it can pull through those figures. And there's a sort of slight difference in, or actually significant difference in the sense that with MRDCL, what comes out in what tables is very much in your control. With QPS, it's more of a user interface, and so what comes out doesn't necessarily come out just as you want it. With an MRDCL, you can do your own calculations, you can decide whether it's percentages or figures, and all sorts of other tricks that you've got at your disposal to get the results you need into your presentation. So we have two different templates, one for QPS users and one for MRDCL users. And this is where, if you like, the presentation I'm about to give splits two ways. So if you're just an MRDCL user, please bear with me while I go through the QPS part, and obviously the other way around, if you're a QPS user and never use MRDCL, just a little bit of patience while I go through the MRDCL part. I'm not going to go through that in huge detail, but I'm just going to make a few comments and a few extra comments about the QPS interface. All right, so that's what we're doing. We're linking these things. How do we specify what we want in QPS? Well, we could do that through specifying our tables, but we haven't quite got the tools we need to extract the data we need in QPS. QPS has some tools for listing out data, but it doesn't really give you the tools for getting at the individual cells of a table to say, I want these block of figures here so that they can go into my chart. It just hasn't got those tools available. So what we are going to use is what we call a QPS-MR add-in. Some people call them snippets as well. And we're going to use the QPS-MR add-in to pick up what we specify in here. So rather than specify your tables in QPS, you can specify your tables in this worksheet. So the first table I want to see is a table that has brands as the row, region as the column, and this is just, if you like, an alternative way of doing what you could do within QPS, where you click on brands to get the rows, you click on region to get the columns, and it produces table 1 for you. So this is doing it a different way. And then we've got some more tables. I want brand by region, but you can see I've got a block here, and I actually want brand 101 to 105 analyze by region. So that gives me the data that's going to go into here. In fact, we only produce a chart on brand 101, but we obviously could in a presentation produce 102, 103, 104, 105 if we wanted to. This presentation has been kept to just 4 charts, but it could obviously be many, many more. So this is going to produce a table for every brand 101 to 105. It's going to do a top 2, use the variable top 2 to do that by region, so that we can get the figures that appear in this chart here, the top 2 box for the 5 brands. And then we've got some other tables here. We've got brand by region, again 101 to 105, and we want a mean score summary table, and we need that because we want a table that gives us these figures here, and that keyword there gives us a mean score summary table with the scale being 5 to 1. So the top box gets a 5 and the bottom box gets a 1. And we've now got a brand table here, 101 to 105, as a grid summary. I don't think that's actually been charted, so that's, if you like, a redundant table at the moment. And you can see what's happening in this designer here. In this designer, we're specifying the tables we want in a spreadsheet rather than inside QPS itself. And that might seem a somewhat different thing to do, but it's a way that you can use QPS. These templates can be customized to do what you want, and you can see that the types of tables we've got here are nothing, or the word standard does the same thing. So we're just going to standard cross tab for these ones that are blank. Where we got a block, we get a block of tables, one for each brand, called 101 to 105. That's a standard table because there's nothing. That gives us a mean summary, and that gives us a grid summary. So this is actually an alternative way of doing tables in QPS. Many QPS users may be unfamiliar with this or be unaware that this type of tool is available to do more complex tables. I know some of our users use add-ins and snippets to produce complex tables that are just not achievable for QPS. And what's underneath all this is in fact some MRDCL script that's reading this worksheet and doing the complex tables that you need, like that mean score summary, to produce the output that you need. And it's possible to add new types here that automatically give you more complex tables. Maybe you want something that's horizontally percentaged in a grid or something like that from a rating scale. All right, so let's carry on with QPS here. Let's go into the folder where I've got the QPS project, and let's have a look at how we implement this. And I will come to MRDCL in a little while. So I'm going to open this now in QPS, and I'm going to use Insight here. You could use the companion as well, of course. So let's just open that. And you can see we've got here the questions and the variable at the bottom here that we were referring to in that spreadsheet when we were specifying the tables here: region, brands, brand 101 to 107, and the top 2. And we could indeed, normally we would just do our tables perhaps through this sort of mechanism, specifying rows, favorite brand, and running the table and getting the results that we need. But we're not going to do it that way here, because we need a special part that the toolkit offers that's going to just pull through the figures we need to our charts. It's going to calculate the tables from that spreadsheet based on that spreadsheet that we've asked for, but we're going to extrapolate the figures we need from what's in the workbook. So let's look at what's in here. All that we've got in here is one line, and it's a line of MRDCL script that says insert RTK QPS MRSTP. RTK stands for Reporting Toolkit. And what that's going to do, it's going to use a special template that's going to read the workbook and do two things, basically. It's going to extrapolate or build the tables we need here, and then it's going to extrapolate the figures that we need to get into our report from here for here. All right, so let's run this to make sure it's doing what it should do, and run those tables, and it'll produce a conventional set of tables, but it'll be using our report toolkit template to do that, so that we've then got the figures available that we can pull through to our reports. So here they are. They look like normal tables. That's the first one, was the same as I did by quick tables just now, and it's gone on to do a table for each of the brands. I think we used brand 101 in the report, but not the other brands, so we've got more data than we need. And I think there's a mean score summary coming up here, which has been produced as well. So all our figures are available. It's now a question of getting them in to our template, and now let's look at how that's done using the reporting template, because all the figures are available. We just want them to come in here and replace the figures in here effectively, so that our report is automatically updated with the correct figures. So we're sort of building a link forward now into our report. Well, that's done by having the mirror image sheets pick up the data. So we looked at just now that we had report data percentages, had a mirror sheet here that said it was table 1 and those cells there. Now that would be quite tedious to set up, so what we want is a system that's going to let us set up in a somewhat more easy way. So let's work with this sheet here and do the work to rebuild that, sort of copying what's been done here already in building the report, or the source of the data in the builder here. We call this the builder sheet. So I'm going to first of all double click on a cell. Now double clicking anywhere in the reporting toolkit will fire up this form, and it gives you a number of things that you can do. And the first thing I want to do is prepare a builder sheet. So I'm going to click on that, and I want to prepare a builder sheet, which is a new one. I've left it with having 50 active rows and 50 active columns. If you want to store more information on one spreadsheet to feed your charts and reports, you can make it 500 rows and columns if you want to, but in this case it's enough. I'm going to give the sheet a new name and call it My Sheet, and I'm going to copy it from Report Data P. So it should make me a sheet called My Sheet now, with 50 rows and 50 columns that are active. And sure enough, here's my sheet, and you can see it's just a mirror image of exactly what was in Report Data P. This is the one feeding these charts here that we looked at earlier, and it's just a mirror image of it, so there's nothing different about it. But now I want to do is I want to tell it, first of all, this is a builder sheet, and I'm going to tell it where this data really comes from rather than the random numbers that it's storing at the moment. So let's first of all tell it that it's a builder sheet. So I'm going to add a builder sheet, otherwise it won't let me do the building. And I'm going to say my sheet is a builder sheet, and it's linked to Report Data P. So that tells me where it's linked to, and now I can do work on this. So if we look and have a quick cheat at the other sheet that has been set up, we can see that this data comes from table 1, row 1, column 1, down to row 7, column 4. So we go into here, and I want to tell it that this is from table 1, row, column 1. So I double click on it again. I specify where it comes from, table 1, row 1, column 1, and you can see that syntax has now been done for me, and I want to then expand it into the cells down to here, which is L10. So let's click on it again, double click, expand the range down to L10. I want consecutive rows and consecutive columns. I wanted every other row. That would be I'd put 2 in there, but I don't. I want to overwrite what's out in those cells at the moment, and it's done it. And I can come to the next one now, and this should be table 2A, row 1. So I'm going to quickly click on there, specify my table as 2A, row 1, column 1, and I think they're consecutive rows and columns as well, just to make it a bit easier for me. Oops, I want that to cell G G20, I think it is. G20. And overwrite, so it's done that one. And the final one comes from table 3. So double click again, specify table 3, row 1, whoops, row 1, not 11, done it again. Okay, and expand that range. And I want that to G29, I think it is. And it's done that. So you can see I very quickly now have got my builder sheet with all the definitions. What I want to get rid of is all these texts now because they aren't part of the definition. So I can just remove text from builder sheet, pick my sheet as being my sheet, and I should end up with a sheet that's just clean now with all the data I want to pull through for my report. There it all is. And that sheet now is ready to link data for a report, and I could actually now do tables using that. Well, I don't actually want this sheet really, so I'm just going to quickly remove it from the builder sheet because I'm not got anything being picked up for real. So I'll be doing the whole job twice, so I'm just going to remove it. But you can see how easy it is to build that data. All right, so that's how I do it. It's pretty easy. All I've got to do now is to put that data that the table, they're in the tables, into my report. Again, I can double click anywhere. I can load data. I can go and find the figures that I ran in QPS just now. So these are the tables that I ran just now. We are just a few moments ago. And I click OK. And Excel hesitated there for some reason, and finally I've got my report with my figures, and you can see now I've got my new figures. And if we were to go back to our QPS tables, we could check these tables here. You can see now the rubbish figures that we had before have all gone. They've all been updated and replaced, and indeed up here the shapes have got 40% in them. So this rectangle here now says 40% of your customers are satisfied, and 40 respondents are in here. Now you're probably wondering how that got in there, because we've only looked at really the tables that have pulled that through. There is another way to get figures into text boxes and other shapes that you're holding on your system. You have a worksheet called Shapes here, where you can say what you want. So you just say whether the output is Excel or PowerPoint. If it's Excel, what worksheet you want to update, which is report, the name of the shape you want to update, which if we look at the report again, this is called the satisfied box. We can look at Alt F10 and see that this is called the satisfied box, and this box here is called the respondents box. You can name these yourselves, and Alt F10 will tell you what they are. So in here we've got their names, and it's telling it to replace %1% with the value in table 3 row 1 column 0, and it's the percentage that we want. And this will literally just do a replace for you. So in the original shapes template we had %1 there, and it's taken the figure that's in table 3 and dropped it in there, so that our final report says that 40% of customers are satisfied, and the survey was based on 40 respondents. And all these figures are accordingly updated with the figures that we ran in QPS. So they all seem to work quite well. That was all fairly easy. We could obviously run those tables again on a filter and update it again, and would get another report out just as quickly. If it was linked through to MRDCL, linked through to PowerPoint, Google Sheets or Google Slides, that would also automatically update as well. I said I'd come and look at how you do this in QPS as well, MRDCL as well. Let's look at that. It's actually a lot simpler. What you do with MRDCL is that you insert the STP file, which is the Reporting Toolkit file template, which will, with a couple of lines of code that you'll need to edit, will do all the work for you. So if we look at that, we can look at MRDCL Reporting Toolkit template. Now, I'm not going to go through this here now. This is something that MRDCL users will want to absorb because it's got a lot of script in there that's going to read the tables you got and output the figures you need. Again, it's a template that you'll hardly change. You might just change the first couple of lines in it, but that's about it. So let's just open this file. So it sets the number of tables at the top and it sets the name of the workbook that you're opening, but the rest of the script is standard that you won't change, and it will get the figures out for you. I'm not going to go through that script now, but when you're ready you can just run that. It'll go ahead and produce the tables. It is giving me a lot of warnings for manipulation, but it has correctly produced the 16 pages of tables that I need, and I can just do exactly the same thing as I did with QPS. Now I can just load that data, or I can build the template depending on what part of the process I'm working on, but these are actually using the same results. The tables are generated both by QPS and MRDCL here in a slightly different way. So if we open up the toolkit template, I should be able to go in here. It's got everything set up ready. We go to the report here. It's the same report, it's just pulling the figures through. I think the table numbers are slightly different here, so you can see that that was table 2A before. It's 2 in this particular report for some reason, but it is the same data. And we can load the data and browse and go and get it again, and it will update the report in the same way as we did just now. So we want the MRDCL tables this time. Open up new report.csv, click OK, and this should update the reports again, and with a bit of luck it will do just that. So let's go to the report, and there's our figures again now, same figures of course as before, and they've been updated. And of course these worksheets here have got the correct figures in that were originally just random figures. They've now got the correct figures in from our data. So we've got a system here now for updating this report. If we were to run this with another 100 records, it would just be literally run the tables, click load data, and you'll get an updated report, which, as I say, could always be linked through to PowerPoint. Well, at that point I'm going to stop. I'm going to see if there's any questions and I'll try and answer them. As I've said already, this is not the final version of this software. This is really the first tools or set of tools. We've got plans for much more sophisticated things in the future and much more adaptability in what you can put out, such as smiley faces and those sorts of things you might report if it's a high figure, and an unhappy face if it's not a high figure, and things like that. But this is step one, and we're certainly looking to collaborate with people to give you all the tools you want to make this a really valuable tool for you to help you get figures into tables and charts and reports from MRDCL and QPSMR. Any questions then, Charlotte? Thank you.
Well, thanks for that, Phil. That was really great. Yeah, we've got a few coming already, so I'll try and work through as many as I can. The first one we've got today is there any limit to the number of slides you can connect to in the PowerPoint?
I think the answer to that is whatever your computer will normally tolerate. I sometimes have problems when I try to connect hundreds of slides into PowerPoint and hundreds of charts, but no is the answer. It won't be anything to do with the reporting toolkit, the limit. It will be whatever you think PowerPoint can take, but no problem at all. It should be just what you're used to working. Whatever you do now will work effectively. It's not doing anything special or different, the toolkit, from what you're doing now when you put a chart in PowerPoint. So no problem.
Great, thanks, Phil. We've got another one here. Can we use a QPS worksheet to specify tables for any project?
Yes, you could. Yes. I mean, this is possibly, I don't know if the questions come from somebody who uses QPS that isn't familiar with having add-ins. Not many people use add-ins because it does mean you've got to understand script to be able to do it, or you've got to get someone like us who knows how to write script to prepare it for you. But they're very powerful ways of doing things that are either too complex for QPS or just very laborious in QPS. So this is just an add-in that lets you produce particular tables, but it actually goes on this particular add-in and gets figures out so that they come out in a spreadsheet in a form that can go into these reports. So it's doing actually more than just producing tables. But yeah, this add-in would let you do tables within QPS just as it is. Yeah, it would. So that's all it is. It's just an add-in. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Got a couple more here. How do I run several reports? You didn't show that.
No, I didn't actually. A good question. I did mention that you could run multiple reports. I think I even referred to running 100 reports or something at one point. It's something that you can do at the moment. So you could, in QPS or MRDCL, you could set a filter up for your report. So let's give an example here. Let's say you were running multi-country study and you wanted to run a report for Thailand, another report for Malaysia, another report for Singapore, another report for Philippines. So whether you're using QPS or MRDCL, you could put an overall filter into your tables so that you ran it once, got the figures, use the reporting toolkit template to get those figures out, plug them in to get your report and saved it. Then you could run the next one and so on. Now, that's not too bad if you're running 4 reports, and indeed would save you a lot of time. It starts to get quite laborious that if you've got 100 reports. And one of the things that we plan to add in to the second release of this would be the ability to automate that in such a way that you could say, I want to produce these 100 reports in QPS or MRDCL. These are the conditions that specify how each of the 100 reports is made, and then you want the reporting toolkit to pick each of those up one at a time and produce your 100 reports. It doesn't do that at version 1. It's something that we're going to put into the second version, which I'll come back to about the future at the end of the webinar. But yeah, that's something that you can do in a sort of one-by-one basis within the toolkit as it stands now. But yeah, sure, if you want 100 of them, that would be a bit more work, or slightly laborious rather not more work.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, we've got, should the data come from QPS Insight, is it possible to get it from Reflect?
Sorry, say that again. Should the data come from
QPS Insight, is it possible to get it from Reflect?
The answer to that is no, it's not. Reflect doesn't let. What's going on here is that QPS is producing the tables, as is MRDCL, and is then effectively what we call listing cells from those tables so that they're available in a spreadsheet to go into the reporting toolkit to produce your report. Reflect actually disables that function. It lets you do tables, but it disables the function whereby you can actually list out figures. So Reflect won't let you do it. But it's not all bad news. There is good news. We are replacing Reflect. We don't actually develop Reflect. We're not the actual owners of Reflect, although it's compatible with our software. We're actually producing an upgrade of Reflect, which is due out later this year, called Resolve, which will allow that. You can't do this from Reflect at the moment. You can only do it from Insight, CATI, or MRDCL, or QPS Companion. But you will be able to do it to Resolve when we release that in the near future. That's going to be available in the next couple of months.
Okay, thanks, Phil. I've got another one here. How do we avoid brands with lower percentages while reporting from tables?
That's a good question. Another thing that's going in, we're doing. I'm going to get caught into actually saying what our development plan is. I was going to bring it at the end. I'll mention it now. We're planning to do development in sort of 3 phases. This is the first phase. The second phase is going to add some conditional reporting tools to what we've got here, and that will be available quite quickly in the next couple of months. We're doing then a third version, which will be things like the automation that I was talking about next, where you want 100 reports and so on, and that's going to be a little bit longer. That's going to probably be into early 2020. There's going to be some tools going in which will allow conditional conditions to be placed on what figures and what things happen, and that will apply to things like smiley faces, where if a figure's greater than 50 you want to see it, if it's not you don't want to see it, or whatever it might be. And likewise with figures that are less than a certain figure for a brand, so that it gets hidden, so it gets removed. That could actually be done, I'm thinking as I'm talking here, that could actually be done within a template though as well. We could put it in that QPS template that you saw where the tables were specified, or you can do it yourself in MRDCL. It is possible to say if a value is less than a certain figure, suppress it, and that would then remove it from the presentation for you. So it can almost be done now, but there will be some more tools going in, and actually the template that we have could be just updated, I would think probably in about 20 minutes, to take out figures that were below a certain percentage if you wanted to hide them.
Great, just got one more here. How do we use the MRDCL script? It looks complex. Do we need training?
It is quite complex, MRDCL script. Depends on if you haven't used some of the more complex tools with MRDCL. That script that I think I briefly showed does look complex. The good news is you don't actually need to understand it really, because it's a standard piece of script that you just plug into the bottom of your projects, and it will produce the figures that you want, or that you're specifying that you want in the toolkit, and pulling them through. So the only two lines you really need to know or understand are the number of tables you've got, which I think was the first line in that file, and entering the name of the workbook you're using for the toolkit, which, because obviously you can rename it, although we call it MRDCL Reporting Toolkit, you can rename it to what you like. The rest of it should be standard script. Now that's not to say you might have some projects where you want to do something that's quite complex or customized, and you might want to get into that script, but we're happy to sort of teach people and take people through that. And as I'm hearing this question now, because it's all quite new stuff, it would, I think, probably a good idea that we have a video that we release that takes people through what that script is really doing, so that anybody who wants to edit it and make it do more things or anything cleverer, you could edit that and do it. So that's something I'll put on my notes at the end of this, as something we can perhaps produce a video on how the MRDCL script works for the toolkit.
Great, well thank you. I think that's all the time we've got for questions now. So we just got a little bit more to go through, just an offer that we've got coming up. So I'll pass over to Phil again to talk you through that.
All right. As I said earlier in the presentation, there's an offer that we're sort of going to make on the back of this this webinar, and we'll be mailing out about this. I think it's on Friday the mail out goes, and what we're looking to do is to make this toolkit something that helps you do what you want to do better. And what we're looking for is we're looking to find 4 companies that we work with, and everybody will benefit from this, so it won't just be the 4 companies that we work with, because we'll share. So you need to be able to be willing to share what we put in as a result of this, but we'll have 4 initiatives whereby you can apply to put something in into the toolkit, which we'll develop free of charge, which is either something that's a problem to you. I know someone raised a question just now about if brands are less than a certain percentage, how can we deal with that? That could be the sort of thing that might be something that's a problem to you, you want put in, so that's just a regular feature. Or it's something that would help you with what you're doing, so an idea that would actually save you time, perhaps. So not something that you can't do within the toolkit, but something that would just save you time. And the procedure we're going to go through is we're going to have an application form that we'll be sending out on Friday, which will allow you just within sort of a few sentences describe what problem you might have that you think this toolkit might resolve for you, or something, as I said, that might just save you a lot of time. And we will then go through a selection process to choose what we think will be the first the 4 companies to work with to collaborate on this. We'll then have a much more in-depth conversation with you to understand what it is you want in a bit more detail. We'll get together a specification on that, and then we'll plug it into an upgrade to the toolkit, and we'll share that with everybody. If you want to be anonymous so that your company's not known who's had this idea, that's fine. We can do it on an anonymous basis, but we want to talk through the idea that you have and develop it, and perhaps put in some of our own ideas to make it even better. And we see this as a collaboration, and we're going to ask for applications to join this collaboration to come in. I think they've got to be in by the end of August, or that'll be on the mail out on a Friday, and we will then review those, and we'll announce which ones we're going to work with during the course of September, with a view to working with each of the 4 companies we work with for 1 week in October and November, with a view to releasing something in December. So we're looking to really move this tool forward over the coming months, and this is one of the ways we want to do it, by understanding what problems you have or what things take you time, and trying to put in facilities to really nail those problems and improve your productivity, because that's really one of our goals. Productivity is one of the things we really like to focus on. So that'll be coming to you on Friday. We'll limit probably the number of applications per company, but that'll all be covered in the mail out that we do this week, and we'd see it as an opportunity to work closely with you and get your ideas, and to hopefully solve some problems for you. And in that mail out on Friday, you will get the video from this. We normally mail out the video quickly after webinars, but this one will actually hold everything back to Friday so that everything can come out in one go. There'll also be, if you want the toolkit version 1 that we've got here now to trial, you can just request that from Charlotte, and she will send that out to you by return. It's free to customers who buy MRDCL or QPS from us. There is a small fee to anyone who doesn't buy from us or has software that's compatible with our software, so that you could use it with other software that produces compatible files. They would have to pay a small fee to use it. It's a one-off fee, by the way. It's not as though it's an annual fee or anything like that. So that's what we've got planned, and we're keen to look at your problems and try and perhaps provide some solutions, and see if we can get your work being done easy as a result of what we're doing here. As I say, we see this as a sort of first step in the process. And the other thing I wanted to really quickly talk about, because I know we're just coming up to the hour, is the next set of webinars that we've got coming up. So if we go on, we'll just go on to the next slide.
Just having a bit of a technical problem with the slide changing.
Maybe it's not going to go on the next slide.
Doesn't seem to want to.
We'll just go on to the next slide, or not.
Possibly not.
Okay, it's not going to go on to the next slide for some reason. I wanted to introduce you to, and unfortunately the slide's not here to back it up, but we have got in November a software week coming up, and this is all fitting in with the idea of productivity and solving problems for you. And we've got a software week coming up in November where we've got a series of events running each day of the week. I think we're managing to get onto the next slide now. Good, saved by the bell. So our MRDC software week is the 4th to the 8th of November, and each day we've got a half an hour webinar. It's not a full hour one like this one, where we're looking at finding solutions on the Monday to data collection problems, Tuesday to data analysis, Wednesday reporting, and Thursday on to online communities. And we do end on Friday with an hour-long session, which is a panel discussion with some software experts from different companies and different countries, more to the point. And we're holding these webinars at both 9 o'clock in the morning UK time and 3 p.m. in the afternoon. To meet different audiences around the world, and we'll be giving you more information about those. If there's any topics you've got that you think you'd like us to cover or cover as part of any of those webinars, or indeed you think you have something to contribute on a panel even, please get in contact with Charlotte, and we'll try and accommodate those in the within the week. But that's the MRDC Software Week, which is on the 4th to the 8th of November this year. So not too long, a couple of months or so away, 3 months away. All right, well, I think we've got through a few questions there and got through quite a lot in that session. I think it's one of the sort of topics where you might think of some things after the end of the session. If you do, by all means, send those questions to Charlotte, and we'll get back to you with answers as best we can. And please bear in mind this idea of collaborating with us. We're very, very keen to find some companies who would like to work with us to actually improve this tool. My view is that version 1 of this that we've got available now can help. I don't think it's the final version, but I would like versions 2 and 3 to be ones that really make a big difference to the time you spend preparing reports and presentations, and really being something that adds something to what you get from our software. So on that note, I'm going to close. Thank you everyone for attending today. We had a very good audience to this today, and I'm glad that you've all managed to get here, and I'm going to say thank you and goodbye.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.